folks. It is a shocking underworld, one that we usually associate with faraway places like Thailand or Cambodia. But a recent FBI sting reminds us of the horrifying reality that is human trafficking here in the U.S., that it is a real and widespread problem here. The FBI says a raid in more than 70 cities led to the arrests of 150 pimps and the rescue of more than 100 sexually exploited teenagers, some of them as young as 13 years old.
A nationwide operation led by the FBI rescued more than 200 victims of sex trafficking, including more than 50 underage victims. They also found another 50 children who'd been reported missing. The initiative, dubbed Operation Cross Country, also led to the arrest of 6 alleged human traffickers.
At 4:55 a.m., the sprawling ranch on the outskirts of McAllen stood silent under a starless sky. Spanish-style walls, manicured lawns, and a long private driveway. The home of Texas State Prosecutor Marcus Hale, a man celebrated for years as the fearless champion who prosecuted cartels and protected border families. That image died tonight. More than 180 federal agents from the FBI and ICE moved like ghosts. Black tactical SUVs rolled in without headlights. No sirens, no warnings. Heavily armed operators in full battle gear, night vision glowing, ballistic shields raised. They surrounded the property with military precision. The order came quietly over the radio. Flashbangs detonated with deafening cracks inside the foyer. FBI! Federal search warrant! Drop your weapons! What followed was pure chaos. Instead of a sleeping family, agents were met by 28 heavily armed guards positioned throughout the house like a private militia. Gunfire erupted in the hallways. Bullets tore through marble and glass. The defenders fought with trained discipline, as if something inside was worth dying to protect. But the federal team pushed forward relentlessly. In under 9 minutes, the shooting stopped. The guards were on the ground, zip-tied and neutralized. As agents cleared the master bedroom, they found Prosecutor Marcus Hale himself, still in his silk pajamas, frozen in disbelief. This was no ordinary raid, because the man who had sworn to uphold justice was allegedly the architect of one of the largest human trafficking networks in America, a brutal empire built on the bodies of women and children, valued at over $2.4 billion. What they would discover beneath this ranch would shock the nation. What do you think happens when the people sworn to protect us become the monsters? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. The raid on Prosecutor Marcus Hale's ranch did not begin that freezing January morning. It started 48 hours earlier on a lonely stretch of Highway 83, just north of the Rio Grande. A routine Border Patrol checkpoint stopped a white cargo van with tinted windows. The driver, a nervous 34-year-old man named Luis Ramirez, claimed he was transporting agricultural workers. But something felt wrong. When agents asked him to open the rear doors, the truth spilled out in the most heartbreaking way. Inside the van, crammed together in total darkness, were 12 terrified human beings. 9 children between the ages of 8 and 14, and 3 young women, all bound at the wrists and ankles. This was not a random smuggling run. This was cargo. Under intense interrogation, Ramirez broke faster than expected. He admitted the van belonged to a transport fleet controlled by none other than the office of Texas State Prosecutor Marcus Hale. Phone records and GPS data pulled from the vehicle told an even darker story. In the past 3 years alone, more than 400 similar trips had been logged, all following the exact same routes that conveniently avoided normal checkpoints. Financial analysts working overnight discovered the first major red flag. Large sums of money, totaling hundreds of millions, had flowed through shell companies directly linked to Hale's personal accounts. The prosecutor wasn't just turning a blind eye. He was allegedly the invisible protector of an entire trafficking empire worth $2.4 billion, moving vulnerable women and children from Mexico and Central America into forced labor and sex trafficking rings across Texas and beyond. By dawn on the second day, the FBI had enough probable cause for a full-scale raid, but they needed to know exactly what they were walking into. 3 hours before the tactical teams rolled out, high-altitude thermal imaging drones were deployed over Hale's 42-acre ranch. What the infrared cameras revealed sent chills through the command center. Beneath the detached garage, an unusually large heat signature pulsed steadily. It wasn't a basement or a wine cellar. The pattern showed massive air circulation and multiple heat sources moving underground. Clear signs of a hidden, climate-controlled facility far larger than anything a private residence should have. The decision was made. At 4:55 a.m., the strike team moved in. What happened next inside that ranch would expose a level of betrayal the American justice system had rarely seen. For years, Marcus Hale was the face of justice in South Texas. A former border prosecutor turned elected state prosecutor, he built his reputation on tough talk against cartels and public promises to protect vulnerable families crossing the Rio Grande. He smiled confidently in campaign ads, standing beside missing children's posters vowing, "No child will be lost on my watch." Behind the polished image, however, federal investigators now allege a much darker reality. Hale had allegedly transformed his office into the ultimate shield for one of the most sophisticated human trafficking networks in the United States. Using his authority as prosecutor, he quietly suppressed evidence against key smugglers, dismissed cases involving known traffickers, and even arranged for critical documents to disappear from official records. Phone intercepts and encrypted messages recovered early in the investigation painted a chilling picture. Hale wasn't merely corrupt, he was the architect. He provided safe passage guarantees for entire convoys of women and children. In exchange, cartel partners funneled massive payments through a web of shell companies stretching from Texas to offshore accounts in Panama and the Cayman Islands. Over 5 years, more than 1,400 women and minors were funneled through his protected corridors, many ending up in underground brothels or forced labor camps hidden across the state. The financial trail was staggering. Forensic accountants traced $2.4 billion in revenue generated from this network, money earned from the exploitation of desperate human lives. Transfers were timed perfectly with court dockets. Large deposits appeared in Hale's linked accounts within days of dismissed trafficking cases or reduced charges against his associates. What made the betrayal even more devastating was how deeply Hale had embedded himself in the system. He sat on task forces meant to combat human trafficking. He advised governors on border security policy, all while allegedly running the very nightmare he publicly claimed to fight. As agents prepared to breach his ranch, they understood they were not simply arresting a dirty prosecutor. They were about to dismantle an empire built on stolen innocence. A man who publicly vowed, "No child will be lost on my watch," was allegedly selling them. If this level of betrayal makes your blood boil, comment "justice" below. How deep do you think this corruption really goes? The moment the flashbangs exploded, all hell broke loose inside Prosecutor Marcus Hale's ranch. 28 armed guards, dressed in tactical gear and moving with military precision, opened fire from elevated positions in the hallways and stairwells. Bullets ripped through drywall and shattered chandeliers as the federal agents pushed forward under heavy resistance. The air filled with the sharp crack of gunfire and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Agents advanced room by room using ballistic shields to close the distance while returning fire with disciplined bursts. Their orders were clear: neutralize, not kill. They needed these men alive to talk. The fierce gunfight lasted 9 agonizing minutes. One by one, the guards were disoriented by flashbangs, overwhelmed by superior numbers, and forced to the ground. Zip ties clicked shut around their wrists. When the shooting finally stopped, the once elegant ranch looked like a war zone. Walls pocked with bullet holes, furniture overturned, and glass crunching under boots. With the house secured, the real horror began to unfold. Agents moved systematically through the residence, clearing every room. In the master suite, they found Marcus Hale crouched behind his king-size bed, still wearing silk pajamas, his face pale with shock. He was immediately taken into custody without resistance, but the biggest revelation was waiting in the detached garage. Following the thermal anomaly detected earlier, tactical teams located a hidden hydraulic lift concealed beneath a thick concrete slab. When activated, the entire floor slid back with a low mechanical hum, revealing a wide, reinforced entrance descending deep underground. This was no simple storm shelter. It was a professionally engineered secret bunker, 3 levels deep, climate-controlled, and built to operate independently for weeks. As agents descended the steel stairs, the scale of the nightmare became undeniable. Level 1 housed a sophisticated command center with multiple encrypted servers, live monitoring screens, and a digital auction platform. Women and children were being streamed and sold in real time to buyers across the country and overseas. The screens still flickered with active bids. Deeper on Level 2, agents discovered the holding facilities, rows of locked rooms resembling prison cells but furnished with thin mattresses and dim lighting. Inside were 187 women and children, many of them trembling in fear. Some children as young as 8 clung to their mothers, sobbing uncontrollably. Young women, some still teenagers, shielded their faces from the sudden bright tactical lights. The air carried the heavy scent of fear, sweat, and despair. One agent later described the moment the first door was opened. A small girl no older than 10 ran forward crying, "Mommy, Mommy!" as she was gently lifted into safety. Rescue teams worked quickly but carefully, wrapping children in blankets and speaking softly to calm the terrified victims. Several women broke down in tears of relief the moment they realized they were finally free. Medics immediately began assessing dehydration, injuries, and signs of long-term trauma. On the lowest level, investigators found the financial heart of the operation: steel crates overflowing with stacks of cash, gold bars, and hardware wallets containing cryptocurrency. Preliminary counts showed more than $87 million in liquid assets already inside the bunker. As the first rescued children were carried up into the morning light, the true magnitude hit every agent present. This wasn't just a corrupt prosecutor's hideout. It was a modern-day slave camp hidden beneath a respected public official's home, a place where innocence was bought, sold, and destroyed for billions. The raid on the ranch had just exposed the beating heart of a $2.4 billion human trafficking empire. While rescue teams were still bringing the last victims up from the underground bunker, a breakthrough came from the command center servers. Forensic cyber analysts unlocked a live database that mapped the entire operation. The files revealed a second critical location, a massive smuggling hub just 6 miles from the Rio Grande, connected by a sophisticated underground tunnel system that bypassed official border checkpoints entirely. There was no time to waste. A major shipment of 42 additional women and children was scheduled to move through the tunnel within the hour. The tactical commander issued immediate orders. 120 federal agents redeployed at high speed toward the remote border property. At 6:40 a.m., under the pale light of a rising Texas sun, the convoy of black SUVs and armored vehicles roared toward the isolated ranch-style warehouse near the river. The element of surprise was their only advantage. If the traffickers learned that Hale had been captured, they would flood the tunnel and destroy all evidence. Agents split into 3 coordinated teams. Alpha Team secured the main tunnel entrance hidden inside a large equipment shed. Bravo Team swept the above-ground warehouse filled with shipping containers. Charlie Team raced to intercept 2 heavy trucks already idling near the riverbank, engines running. Resistance erupted the moment the first breach charges blew open the shed doors. 58 armed smugglers and corrupt border agents opened fire from behind concrete barriers and stacked containers. Gunshots echoed across the dry brush as bullets ricocheted off steel shipping crates. Federal agents returned fire with precision, using flashbangs to disorient the defenders while advancing under cover of ballistic shields. The battle was intense, but short. Within 12 minutes, the smugglers' defensive lines collapsed. Dozens were forced to drop their weapons and surrender on their knees. Several tried to flee toward the river but were quickly cut off by interceptor boats positioned on the Rio Grande. Inside the warehouse, agents discovered a staging area prepared for transport. Dozens of metal cages, bottled water, and stacks of counterfeit documents. But the true horror lay beneath the ground. Alpha Team descended into the tunnel, a professionally constructed passage wide enough for small vehicles, equipped with ventilation fans, lighting, and reinforced walls. Halfway through the 400-meter tunnel, they found 42 women and children huddled together in a holding chamber, waiting to be moved north. Many of the women were clutching infants. The children looked exhausted and terrified, some too weak to stand after days underground. Simultaneously, Charlie Team stopped the 2 escaping trucks. Inside the cargo holds, agents found additional victims and crates containing over $1.2 billion in cryptocurrency wallets and bearer bonds linked directly to the network. By 8:15 a.m., the tunnel was fully secured. A total of 58 more individuals were taken into custody, bringing the overall number of arrests that day to 86. The border tunnel battle had just delivered the final, devastating blow to Marcus Hale's sprawling empire. As the first rays of the Texas morning sun broke over the border horizon, federal agents stood amid the wreckage of the underground tunnel. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and sweat. Inside the warehouse, the soft cries of the 42 newly rescued victims echoed through the space. Exhausted children trembled under emergency blankets, their eyes still wide with terror after days spent buried underground. Medics and social workers moved quickly, checking for injuries, offering water, and speaking gently in Spanish to calm the traumatized group. Back at the ranch, the 187 women and children were slowly brought up from the secret bunker into the daylight. One FBI agent later admitted the sight of the frail, frightened faces emerging from the darkness had left even seasoned operators struggling to hold back tears. In just under 4 hours, the operation had shattered a monstrous empire. Servers containing live auction platforms, financial records, and millions in cryptocurrency were already being secured and analyzed, promising to expose even deeper layers of corruption within the network. By mid-morning, the operation was over. A total of 86 individuals, including Prosecutor Hale and dozens of his corrupt associates, were in federal custody. The combined raids on the ranch and the border tunnel had dismantled a monstrous criminal enterprise valued at $2.4 billion. Beyond the human trafficking ring, investigators also uncovered large shipments of synthetic opioids and fentanyl hidden alongside the victims in the tunnel. These drugs were intended to be distributed through the same underground network, turning vulnerable women and children into both commodities and unwitting couriers. The deadly combination of human exploitation and poison was designed to maximize profit while destroying lives on both sides of the border. 187 women and children were rescued from hellish conditions and are now receiving medical care and safe housing. Hale, the man once trusted to protect Texas families, now faces multiple federal charges including human trafficking, child exploitation, racketeering, and narcotics distribution. He will likely spend the rest of his life in a supermax prison. This case delivers a sobering truth. The most dangerous predators are not always hiding across the border. Sometimes they wear suits, carry badges, and sit in positions of power. We must demand real transparency and accountability from every public official. Our children's safety depends on it. Stay vigilant, protect the innocent,